Knox Country
Podcast Edition.
I've always been around great songwriters and artists my whole life. I'm Michael Knox. Welcome to my world.
Hey, what's up, everybody? This is Jason Aldean, and you are listening to my boy Michael Knox on Knox Country
Podcast.
Welcome to the Knox Country Syndicated Radio Show podcast. All right, we are here today with Miss Jennifer Hanson, and thank you for coming. This is awesome.
Thank you for having me.
Very excited about this one.
Yes, Shalacy will be chiming in a lot today because she was a super fan of your first album.
Trying not to be creepy or like a stalker, but I make no promises.
But a lot of people don't know this, but you were one of the first pioneers of an artist-producer producing your first album.
Yeah, I got lucky that Mike Dungan, who signed me to Capitol Records, allowed me to co-produce my first record with an engineer. When he signed me, he loved my writer demos, and I produced all of those. So he was worried that if he put me with someone like Dan Huff or, you know, a Scott Hendricks or an established producer that kind of had their own sound, that it would affect my sound. So he allowed me to go in with Greg Droman, who is an engineer. And that was his idea, not to prepare me with an actual producer, but more of an engineer. And I went in and I cut 5 sides, and Beautiful Goodbye ended up being my first single. So, yeah, it was just because I think he really honestly didn't know what to do with me because I was so left of center. But I appreciate that he allowed me to kind of just do my thing and be myself without trying to change that. I actually had a development deal on RCA prior to signing at Capitol, and I worked with Paul Worley. Yeah. And, you know, those sides didn't really reflect me as an artist. They were my songs, but they just didn't really capture me artistically, and that deal didn't work out. So, so Dungan, I think he saw the value in what I had to offer, not only as a writer, but as a producer. Yeah. But that wasn't really something I set out to do. It just was a kind of an extension of my artistry. Yeah. But Mike came from the school of Arista Records, mm-hmm. where they were very big artist developers. Yeah. You know, they allowed a lot of different teams to happen and a lot of different things to happen. Yeah. So glad he carried that to that place too, mm-hmm. because that allowed you to kind of have that moment of your first record of really defining yourself and having your voice as an artist. Yeah, it did. And I think at that time, Beautiful Goodbye came out in 2002. And it was really, I think, just unique. There wasn't anybody that was really doing that. It was kind of, you know, even just the way that we kind of marketed the single and all of it. It was just kind of unique. It was kind of Sheryl Crow, Emmylou Harris. Yeah. Nobody was really doing that at the time. So it kind of found a niche. It found a spot and a lane, and then the song took off and worked. Unbeknownst to any of us, it was going to do that. I think it was kind of a surprise to all of us. And I think we got up to 14 on the chart on that one. So, but you were one of the true singer-songwriters at that time. Well, thank you. You know, especially for a female at that time, because that was during a time where there were a lot of females coming out, but a lot of them wasn't writing their own stuff. No, they weren't. And I think that's part of what gave us a little bit of an advantage of being something that was unique. It was definitely a talking point when I came out, and people were kind of intrigued by that. But again, it was just, for me, it was just a natural extension of my songwriting. Yeah. Because anytime I would write a song, I would go in the studio and record it and be involved in every aspect of that process. I never really set out to be a producer, but for my music, it worked. Yeah. And I know for me, being an artist, a female artist, trying, you know, to make it in the business. Mm-hmm. When you came out, it was like, okay, you looked at the album cover first, and it was totally different. You know how you had your Alabama shirt on, Alabama you were rocking an electric guitar, which was different. Yeah, you know, and you did have this different sound. And Beautiful Goodbye came out, and it was like, oh my gosh, Rush Dial bought the album, and then you start looking at all the credits, and you pretty much
co-wrote almost every song on the album, and then you look and you co-produced. So as a young female artist, you're like, wow, there's like no limits. And so you sort of open that door to other female artists to say, hey, you don't have to just sing. You can do it all, and so you were really an inspiration.
Thank you.
Well, that was definitely the beginning of that new generation
of
the female singer-songwriter and all that.
I'm old.
No, watch out.
No, you're not.
Now looking back, the one question I have, you did tours. Who were your big tours back then? Who were you touring with?
I opened for Alan Jackson, for Martina. Did some shows with Sarah Evans, and
so when you were out with Martina, did she go, all right, I got to sing that one song? I'm going to take it down a half step live. I mean, because Let Freedom Ring is up there, buddy.
Yeah. Oh, no, that girl can sing. I mean, Martina's, she's one of our greats in the business. But no, I got to do a lot of cool things, that first song, it really made an impression. It got me, I got to play The Tonight Show, which back then was not always a given. Even got to sit on the couch with Jay Leno, which was really cool, which, debuted at the Opry, got nominated for New Female Vocalist at the ACMs, at the CMT Awards. Beautiful Goodbye was nominated for Video of the Year. I mean, there was a lot of cool things that came from that song, and that initial launch was I think considered successful. I think that year was the only female artist that broke.
Yeah. There
were no females back then, which it's still kind of, I mean, we still are struggling with that now. We're very male dominated in our genre.
Do you have an opinion about that? Is it because so many women are buying product? Maybe they buy the guys over the females sometimes, or what's your honest opinion about maybe why that's not relevant?
To be honest, I don't know why it's so difficult sometimes for females to break in our industry. There are a lot of talented young females out there. I mean, obviously we've got like now Maren Morris, which she's fantastic. Carly Pierce is starting to break through, which is great. But there's a long list of them that haven't, and so many that should have, and I don't know why. I don't know why that is.
Well, the 90s had a whole bunch.
That was the era for females, and then in the 2000s it kind of shifted, and I'm not sure we've ever gotten back.
I wonder if that was more of a pop country thing, where maybe the females weren't doing that. I don't know.
I don't know.
I'm just talking out loud.
Obviously Shania was, huge and groundbreaking, and Taylor, of course, too, Taylor Swift. But
that's a lot of years between.
It is a lot of years between. So to answer your question, I'm not exactly sure why it is.
It just is.
It just is. It just kind of is.
Okay, well, let's fast forward then a little bit, because you wrote a song called "Lead the Pieces" for the Wreckers, which, like I said earlier, man, was one of my favorite hands down songs in country.
Thank you.
Period. And we can play it today. If it was a new demo today, it would get cut right off the bat, I believe. I think it's still one of those songs where that can hang in there.
I got so much grief for that demo, by the way, back when.
Oh, I remember.
Yeah. When I wrote that song with Billy Austin, it was the very first time that I had ever written to a loop. And back then, and we're talking, I wrote that song in 2001. Nobody was writing to loops back then. Now it's all loop dominated, or everybody writes to tracks, but nobody was doing that back then. And I don't know what it was about writing to a groove that kind of, I don't know, it just allowed that song to kind of flow out. And we wrote it really fast, and when we tracked it, I had the guys play it to a loop, and I got so much grief from my publisher. They're like, what are we going to do with this song? It's too pop. But you
had your record deal then.
I didn't get my record deal till 2002. I had a development deal at the time.
So how did a song that good not make it on your record?
Well, that's a good question. That is a good question. It was pitched to the label, and that initial batch of songs when I first went in and recorded for Capitol, it It just wasn't one of the ones they chose. And then by the time we got back in to finish the record, again, it just wasn't on the radar for whatever reason. And by the time I went to make my second record, which unfortunately I ended up sitting there for a few years trying to get them to allow me to get back in to record. And I kept bringing them songs, and I brought them that song. And I brought them several songs that have since gone on to be successful or be recorded or what have you. And they just didn't hear it.
Yeah.
And I think they thought it was too pop. But what's interesting is it took someone like Michelle Branch, who was initially a pop artist and then decided to come over to our genre and do this duo with Jessica Harp and make a country record. But it took someone like her, because she was the one, when that song was pitched to her by Arthur Buenohora, and she was the one that fell in love with it, and she got it. But I think it was probably her pop sensibility that she got it. And then John Shanks, who produced that record, also coming from the pop world. Yeah. So, it finally found the right home.
Yeah, and
I'm glad it did.
That was a big song.
That was your first number one?
That was my very first number one, yeah. Hey, y'all, this is Jennifer Hanson, and you are listening to Knox Country
Podcast.
Yeah. So what's that like? Coming from being an artist, things are struggling, and then boom, you get a number one record on Michelle Branch and her duo partner.
It was very validating. Because that song, that was one of those songs, you write and you co-write with other people and everybody brings something into the room. But that song, for whatever reason, was completely me. Yeah. I mean, not that Billy didn't help me write it, but it really, really was.
Yeah, it was your identity.
It was my melody, and it kind of just fell out, and it was my story. And so it really validated my songwriting for me.
Yeah.
And to be honest, I remember when we wrote that song, I wasn't even going to demo it because it was too close to home. And
that's what stuns me about the label is why they wouldn't let you cut it, because that's where the magic is when you find the songs that are so personal.
Well, again, we had already made the first record.
Yeah.
And when we came back around to the second record, they were so focused on, we got to have that first single. We got to have the debut single off your second record. And so, and not that song wasn't worthy of being that, but they were so focused on that, then they just didn't hear it. And part of the reason I left Capitol, because I asked to be released from that deal, was because after about 2 years of sitting there and bringing them songs, Leave the Pieces being one of them, and they kept telling me, you don't have a single yet. We can't go into the studio until you have a single. And during that time, Leave the Pieces got cut. And now I was about to have this debut single on this new duo, and yet they're telling me I don't have songs that are worthy of being a single for me. And I went in and I met with Mike, and I just said, I don't understand why you keep telling me I don't have a single, but I just got this cut and it's supposed to be their debut single. And he just looked at me and he said, they will never play that on country radio because it's too pop.
It's so funny is when I heard the song and I looked and saw who wrote it, I was like, why didn't Jennifer Hanson cut that herself? I mean, not that I loved their version. I loved what the records did, but it was like, I could totally hear you as an artist singing that song.
Yeah. And so again, that was part of the reason I just realized that we were on separate pages, and I thought, I probably need to just cut my ties and see if I can move on. And I left the label, and the song was released and went to number one, and it was like it validated for me that I was right and that I was following my gut, and that I made the right decision. And then I ended up signing with Universal South, and I made a second record, and so that song definitely it's an important song for me. Yeah.
But that's so your second record deal kind of didn't make the impact the first one did.
It didn't, and unfortunately I signed at Universal South, which is a sister label to Universal. And at the time I signed, they had just got a new president, a whole new team, and I was one of the very first people they signed. So I was kind of a guinea pig.
Yeah.
And I had already made a record, and they bought that record from me, and they wanted to put out a song called Joyride, which, to be honest, I didn't even want that song on the record, but that's what they felt was radio. And we put it out, and we were off to a great start. And about, 6 weeks into the single being out, the head of promotion quit, and the whole thing fell apart. Yeah. So unfortunately, I just was at the wrong place at the wrong time. People were very receptive to the music. I had just come off Leave the Pieces being number one, and A Different World, which was recorded by Bucky Covington. He was on American Idol. It was his debut single, and that was a top 5. So radio was really embracing the songs, but when your head of promotion quits and the whole team falls apart, good luck getting a song up the chart.
Yeah.
So it was just bad timing.
So where did Let Me Down Easy come into play?
Well, Let Me Down Easy, fast forward from, that was 2007 when I put out Joyride. And I was on Universal South for about 3 years. And then in that time, I was having success as a writer. And I was signed to Sony Publishing. And they were super supportive of me as a writer. And they kept encouraging me to maybe just step back from being an artist and just focus on songwriting. So that's what I started to do in like 2010. Yeah. And that was right around the time that we wrote Let Me Down Easy. And that song was another one of those songs that just fell out super fast. I wrote it with Mark Nessler and Marty Dotson. And we wrote it with Billy in mind, which, when you go into a writing room and you're like, oh, well, Billy Currington's cutting, let's write something for Billy. 9 times out of 10, that song ain't going to get cut by Billy Currington. But we lucked out, and we happened to write something that just had a little magic on it. And
now, is this the song that you had been scheduled for different co-writes?
I was scheduled to write with Jerry Flowers. And Jerry is a very successful songwriter, and he is the bass player for Keith Urban, and he's a dear friend of mine. We actually were on the road together for many years. He was my band leader when I was on Capitol and my bass player. And we were scheduled to write numerous times. And that particular day, that was like the 5th time we were scheduled to write. And he would always cancel, which it just kind of became funny. And that particular day, I was almost to the row to write with Jerry, and he called, and when I answered the phone, he's like, oh man, I threw my back out at the gym. I can't write today. And I was like, it's cool, Jerry, it's all good, I love you, we'll find another day. And I hung up the phone, and I called Mark Nessler, and I said, he canceled on me again. He goes, well, come write with me and Marty. We only got about an hour because he's got to go pick up his kids early from school, but we'll get something going. So I show up, and I threw out that idea, and Mark started singing this melody, and 45 minutes later, we had Let Me Down Easy. Yeah. And the next week, we went in and demoed it, and it got put on hold immediately, and it was cut within a few weeks of us doing the demo, and ended up being Billy's debut single off that record, and it went to number 1.
Well, that was a big song.
It was a big song.
And no offense, when I hear you singing at Writers' Nights, it's awesome.
Thank you.
But I just love the hanging melodies and everything of that song. But
that melody is Mark Nessler. But it was a great collaboration between the three of us, and
but really, it's thank you, Jerry.
Thank you, Jerry, for canceling on me.
Knox Country Podcast Edition.
Some of you know me as a record producer for acts like Jason Aldean and Thomas Rhett. Others know me as the son of rock and roll legend Buddy Knox, Party Doll fame back in 1957. I'm Michael Knox. Welcome to my world. You're listening to Knox Country
Podcast.
Hey, this is Keith Urban.
What's up, y'all? It's your boys here, Florida Georgia Line.
Hey, this is Little Big Town.
And you're listening to Knox Country.
You've entered Knox Country.
Welcome back to the Knox Country Podcast. All right, okay, so let's fast forward a little more now. And there was a movie kind of floating around your world where you kind of jumped into this movie soundtrack. So tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, that was a complete fluke. Country Strong, which is the movie with Gwyneth Paltrow and Tim McGraw. That song was written years ago. It took 10 years from the time it was written till the time it finally found its home with the movie. But I wrote that song. Another song I wrote for myself as an artist. And when I was signed to Capitol, Mike Dungan hated that song. Literally hated it. I mean, he told me to my face, like, I don't like that song. Our head of promotion, Bill Catino, loved it. But Mike was like, you're not cutting that song. I hate it. So I was like, okay, I won't cut it. And it actually was recorded by Miranda Lambert when she was on Nashville Star, when she was a contestant on Nashville Star. And had she won, it would have been her debut single, but she didn't win. Buddy Jewell won. So that song kind of laid around for 10 years. And fast forward to, I think it was 2010, and I was at the time writing for Sony Publishing, and Sony Pictures was making this film, which at the time was called Love Don't Let Me Down. And they asked all of the writers, all of the Sony writers, to try to write a song for the title track to this movie called Love Don't Let Me Down. So everybody went off trying to write Love Don't Let Me Down. I wrote two of them, two different versions of it. And somebody at Sony pitched Country Strong for the Gwyneth character. And the music supervisor loved it. And they said, wow, we really love this song. And they ended up recording it, and it became kind of this pivotal moment in the movie. And after recording it, they decided to change the title of the film to Country Strong. So I ended up getting the title track by default.
But you found out about that in a
I found out about it while I was on a flight to California. I was going home to see my mom, flying to Los Angeles. And I had my People magazine with me. I was all by myself. And we got about, an hour into the flight. So I pull out my People magazine. I'm flipping through. And mind you, I hadn't heard nothing. All I knew is that they had cut the song and it was supposed to be in the film that was still called Love Don't Let Me Down. But I didn't know anything else other than that. So I'm flipping through my People. And all of a sudden, I see this big picture of Gwyneth Paltrow, and it's like, Gwyneth Paltrow's new movie, Country Strong, comes out, blah, 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 And I'm like thinking...
They ripped me off. No.
What the heck? Like, wait a second. I was totally confused because I'm thinking, I thought the film was called Love Don't Let Me Down, and why are they saying it's called Country Strong? And of course, I'm on a flight, and I can't call anybody, so I have to wait till we land. And
but luckily, that flight's only 4.5 hours.
Right, exactly. So I land, and I call my publisher, and I'm like, do you guys have any idea, like, why is they saying that this film's called Country Strong? And they're like, we don't know. They didn't know. And which I think is kind of the way it works in the whole film TV thing. Things happen really fast and decisions are made. And apparently they decided, again, to retitle the film and got the title track to the film. So on a 10-year-old song.
Did you ever get to meet Gwyneth Paltrow?
I did. We had a premiere here in Nashville, and I got to meet her, which was really cool. And then of course she performed the song on the CMA Awards with Vince Gill, because Vince is actually singing with her on the song. On the demo, it's myself and Mark Nessler, and so it's kind of a not duet, but it's kind of got that it had that Vince harmony, and so they got Vince to come and sing it with Gwyneth, which was amazing because I'm a huge Vince Gill fan. So anyways, it was a pretty cool moment. And
now that song was nominated, right?
It was not nominated because it didn't qualify.
It wasn't nominated for a Source?
It might have, well, if it was...
A Satellite Award, sorry.
Yes, it was nominated for that. There was a song that was nominated from the soundtrack for an Oscar, but it wouldn't qualify for that because in order to be nominated for an Oscar, you have to write the song for the film, and that song was not written for the film. So,
we had somebody else.
Jessie.
We had Jessie Alexander here, and she lost a Grammy nod because
she lost an Oscar.
And a Grammy. Because it wasn't written for the
film.
The film.
Yeah.
And that's interesting because. No offense, a lot of songs are brought into movie soundtracks, and they might not be written for the movie, but I mean that's kind of uncool. If it's on the soundtrack, it needs to be part of the movie.
Well, I think so too. What the heck? Yeah. I think they need to change that rule. No, I agree. It's kind of an odd rule, I think, but hey, rules are rules, I guess. So,
but me knowing you and hearing hearing you over the years talk to me about your career and stuff, and knowing how you started out as one of the early producer artists, female producer artists. Now you're kind of getting into that world a little more these days.
A little bit. It's not something that I've actually sought out. I think I told you guys this story about when I first came to Nashville, so my dad moved here when I was a kid because he played with Alabama, the group Alabama, for 18 years on the road. And when he brought me here to come visit him, I was about 11 years old, and he took me down to Music Row, and he took me to what was then the Maypop building, which is now the Pier building.
Yep.
So the very first building that I ever stepped foot in on Music Row was the Pier building. And of course, again, it was Maypop. And Marty Craighead was the receptionist at the time. And anyways, I was completely fascinated by all the plaques on the walls, and it was really, just exciting to be there. And so fast forward a lot of years, and now I'm writing there. So it's kind of a big 360 moment.
Yeah, but that's an amazing kind of thing when you're, knowing that that's the first building you walked in as a kid. Now
as a kid,
it's 360 years later. It's cool. I want to talk more about kind of what you're doing now, because you're kind of getting into production now.
Yeah.
And is that something I know you've produced your own records and stuff, but do you like producing other artists?
It's not something that I've sought out to do. And most of the time when I am in a scenario or a situation where I'm working with an artist and we're writing together, it's kind of a natural progression for me to go ahead and just finish out the track. And that I love doing. So the few things that I've done recently, like Jeffrey East or the Harper Gray Project, these are artists that I've been writing with. So again, it starts at the organic process of writing the song, which for me, it's just natural to go ahead and just finish it out. And I love doing vocals. Having been an artist and being a singer, I'm really in tune with that. So I like the whole process. So I kind of approach finishing those songs for those artists the same way I would do it for myself.
Yeah.
So if it's the right scenario, I absolutely love doing it.
Well, the things I've heard that you're producing, I love.
Thank you.
Very, very stand out, very, very unique, and very individual. I love the approach of it. So I'm probably wearing you out more than anybody about it, just really wanting to see more of that in your future.
Well, I love doing it, again, if it's the right scenario, if it's the right artist, and if they feel like I'm the right person for the job too, because I'm super sensitive to that, having been an artist, and in the past having been put in the room with situations that maybe weren't right for me, and understanding how important that is, being paired with the right producer that really helps to develop that sound. And you know that better than anybody with Aldean, and being critical and key to helping him become Jason Aldean. It's like it's got to be the right match. And so if it's the right situation, I love doing it. I love being in the studio. I love writing songs. I love making music. And I love getting to the final product. And that's part of the reason, too, that I've enjoyed doing the sync stuff, which, again, writing for film, TV, for ads, that's one of the really cool benefits that Peer has afforded me, because Peer has such an incredible sync department. And having been an artist, I can kind of translate that artistry into doing some sync stuff. Yeah. And we've been starting to get some cool placement. We just got the title track to a Disney film, and I had a song on a new show called Station 19, which is a spinoff to Grey's Anatomy, and just some other cool things that are some possibilities. So I've loved doing that, because again, it's writing songs, it's quickly getting them produced and done, and turning them around really fast. And
but that's a whole different
world.
Kind of beast, because when you're doing songs and producing or doing your own demos or things like that, you get to spend a different kind of time.
Yeah.
And then when you're in sync, it's really, sometimes it's more about selling a vibe.
Yeah.
More than it is about selling a whole song concept.
You're absolutely right. It is a whole different way of writing.
And just for people who don't, when she says Peer, she's meaning Peer Music is where she's writing, but and then sync is for film, television, commercials, things like that, where you're really not hearing a whole song. You're just hearing this thing,
right?
But it hooks you, and it's and it's a part of that moment,
right? Yeah. it's a whole different mindset to write for sync, and I've kind of had to educate myself a little bit on that, because coming from the Nashville School of Writing and writing real songs that you want to get out into the world and, you know, make a difference, and not that sync songs don't do that, but it's a different way of writing. It's serving a different purpose. So, you know, it's been fun. It's been really fun to kind of be able to step back into tapping into that artist side of myself, because to be honest, for the last, I'd say 8 years, I've really just been writing for other people. And I haven't been tapping into that artistic side of myself. Yeah. So sync allows me to do that. And I get to explore all kinds of different genres, because in sync, one day they need, you know, something pop, and the next day they need something indie rock. It's a whole different thing, you know, so I'm getting to try all kinds of stuff and kind of indulge that creative side of me.
Well, it almost sounds like it's refreshing for you.
It's been very refreshing. It's been fun. I think more than anything, what's been fun is that I'm getting to get behind the mic and sing again, because most of the time, 9 times out of 10, when I'm in a writing situation, I'm writing for someone else. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Because the new model now in Nashville is that you write with an artist to get on that project. Unfortunately, that's the way we have to do it. And so I don't get the luxury of just getting to sit down and write, write for me, or write for, you know,
to experiment, to branch out.
Yeah, exactly.
Hey guys, it's Shalacy. Check us out on the web at knoxcountry360.com or on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at knoxcountry360.
Well, and to talk more about the writing thing, you're coming from, you know, a day where you were a singer-songwriter. It might have been you, one other person in a room, sometimes a third.
Right.
A rare moment. Nowadays, you're almost starting at 3.
Absolutely.
And sometimes somebody invites somebody else in the room, or a guy brings a loop in, and the loop's got 2 people on it.
Right.
And you didn't know.
I know.
So is that trend? I mean, are you enjoying's the wrong word, but I mean, does it frustrate you sometimes when you're like, I mean, I wish I could get back and just do a co-write?
Yes.
Sometimes, you know, but it is the way of the beast right now.
It is. And I think, you know, in order to be successful and continue to be successful in this business, you have to evolve. You have to be willing to change. I think there are some writers that refuse to do it, and they haven't been able to continue in this business. Yeah. I've been really fortunate that I've been here for 20 years. I've been a signed writer with the publishing deal for 20 years. But I've had to learn to adjust and adapt and change and learn to be a chameleon in the room. And it's a different headspace now when I'm sitting down to write, like I said, with an artist, and there's a track guy and there's 2 other writers and the artist. I mean, and you just have to go with the flow, because at the end of the day, my job is to write a song that artist will hopefully record and will be a single. Yeah. You know, which is a tall order. Yeah. And I better do it from 10 to 2. I better get that artist in and out and get that track done and get their vocals tracked, and then turn that sucker around fast, because that's the attention span now that we have. It's a whole different game. It's a whole different thing. So that is why I do like the sync thing, because I can just kind of go off with 1 or 2 other people, and we just have fun and we make music. And you guys are affording me that opportunity to do that. Knox is affording me that opportunity to get back to Jennifer Hanson. When I was at Sony, it was more of a machine over there, because it's a bigger company, and it was more about getting the cuts. And so I wasn't able to do that.
Speaking of cuts, hello, your Jason Aldean cut?
Yes. So excited to be.
Is that your first Aldean cut?
Yes.
I'll wait for you.
I'll wait for you on the new Rearview Town record. So proud of that cut. The cut is incredible. That's the other thing as a writer, that there's been times where you have a song that's cut and you get demo-itis, or you love the demo and you hear the cut and it doesn't quite live up to, you know, maybe the demo. You're a little disappointed. Not disappointed with the Aldean. That thing is incredible, and I'm so grateful and proud to be on that record.
Aldean and the musicians and the engineers all did a phenomenal
Yeah,
job.
they did.
Did
on
a
that
phenomenal
song.
job of taking my direction.
Yes, they did.
Oh, and
Yes,
the
they did.
producer, I guess he was all right.
No, hey,
The whole record
those
is
are,
incredible.
but
It
songs
is.
like that, I'll wait for your very bread and butter, and those are the easiest ones to cut. In our crew, because those are the ones that you kind of see on the list, and it's just bread and butter. Where they just tear a hole in the track.
Oh, and the musicians in the studio were like flipping out over the song
Well,
when they cut it.
And it's
It's-
reacting very well.
I've seen like the video on YouTube has a lot of views, maybe in comparison to some of the other songs, and so it does seem like people are responding to it.
Great
so
song.
I'm keeping my fingers crossed that it maybe becomes a single.
He'll release a tempo sometime on this record.
Yes. No, but the thing is, I mean, it is an incredible record with a lot of incredible songs. So just to even be on the record is huge.
Well, I
And
appreciate it. Well,
so
trust me, it's
grateful.
best song wins, and that one's on there for a reason.
Well, thank you for cutting it.
Thank you, Jennifer Hanson, for being here.
Thank you for having me, Michael Knox and Shalacy Griff.
Well, thank you, Miss Jennifer.
Knox Country.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of the Knox Country Podcast. Special thanks go out to co-host Miss Shalacy Griffin and producer Donnie Walker. See you next time.
You've entered Knox Country Outtakes.
Oh, one more time. Sorry. I'm out of practice. This is
Who is Nathan Johnson? You remember that off The Jerk or no?
I don't.
You never saw The Jerk with Steve Martin?
I vaguely remember. We're chatting and we're talking, and I'm eating my breakfast. I'm thinking, I'm having breakfast with Vince Gill. This is awesome. And I went to pay, and he had bought my damn breakfast.
I was about to say, did he
No,
leave you with
he
his
bought
check?
my breakfast. I went to pay, and the waitress like, he got it. And I was like, are you kidding me? Like, Vince Gill just bought my breakfast.
Knox Country. Podcast Edition.